The timer has now begun. Don't get me wrong. I'm questioning why I'm writing this, or even telling you about it. But the last couple days have just been too crazy. And if the next 2 days are to be our last, I might as well tell you what the hell happened. Just wanted to say hi. Was the subject of an email I received after work. I'd gotten home, fed the dog, and just opened my laptop when it came into my inbox. Hell, it's obviously spam. But who knows? So I clicked it. I saw nothing. Just a blank email where writing should have been. I closed it and thought nothing more. An hour passes. Another chime. Another email. I go check, but no email. But wait, what's this? That same email from before is still there, now marked unread. That's weird. I click it. Still just a blank email. Think little of it and close it. Now, it's around midnight, and I'm about to pass out on my couch after binging Netflix. Another chime. I check my phone. Email is bold. Now I'm starting to wonder. Before I can even open it, I hear some rustling outside. Figure it's the neighbor's cat. I open the email. Get the door. A heavy knock hits my door just as I'm reading it. More like a thud, really. I jump back, startled. Reach for the closest thing I can find, which is a butter knife. If I hadn't nearly shat my pants, I guess the image would have been funny. I stood there, waiting, hardly breathing. Minutes, then probably over an hour, frozen in fright. No other sounds. Then, in the silence of the night, a chime. I creep towards my phone, and that fucking bold message is sitting there, just like it was before. I open it. You had your chance. Before I can process the words, a timer pops up on my screen. It's been ticking away steadily. Can't get it off of my screen. Then it comes up randomly. 2 days I've been waiting for another knock. Blew off work. Blew off everything. No knock yet. Don't get me wrong. It could be a prank. I have a couple shitty friends I could think of that may have tried something like this. But somehow, I'm not too optimistic. Well, it's been another day. The timer's been funny. The hours don't always line up. Last night, there was 70 or so left. Today, 86 and counting. I'll tell you, I've been trying to look into this on my own. But here's the point I'm getting at. I can't. I have a couple good ideas about what may be happening, but every time I try to search for anything, even remotely related to my hunches, I just get shut down by the timer. I can still get on Reddit, however. Hasn't helped me until now. You all know how primitive the search option is here. But I came up with something. You. Yes, each of you can help me. I know Reddit sleuthing doesn't always pan out, but you're my last hope. I'm basically a prisoner in my own home right now. And if I can't get to the bottom of this when that timer hits 0, I don't want to know what will happen. I moved into this house about 7 years ago, relocated for work. I'm in environmental research, particularly methane, and I oversee a lot of prospecting projects in the Midwest. Well, I noticed a few sites, one of which was off a reservation near eastern Oklahoma. There were a lot of disputes, but ultimately, the land was federal and we went ahead with the survey. But something happened that rattled me a bit, even then. I was out at a bar the night we got the go-ahead in this small local town. Very quiet. Kind of a dive, really. Called the Lakota. And I'd had a couple drinks when the bartender hands me a glass. Says it's on the house. I think, okay, well that's pretty nice. I have been tipping him, so maybe he's reciprocating. He calls it the Han. I ask him what the hell that means. Han, he says, it's a strong little local flavor for you. Not one to be rude. I drink it. Tastes like jet fuel. I've never had anything like it, before or after. It burned down my whole throat, and for hours afterwards, it felt like I had some gnarly acid reflux. I chalked it up to dinner and didn't think much of it. But since then, I've occasionally felt this strange sensation in my chest. It's almost like my chest has little feathers in it, tingling. When I cough, it sounds like I've got a whole pillow stuffed under my chest plate. I'd been to the doctor plenty of times for it. They don't see anything. It's also not there all the time. Maybe every couple weeks or so I'll get that strange tingly feeling, like a muffled kind of pressing inside of my chest. But I don't want to digress forever here. The point I'm trying to make is that I'm certain now that this drink has something to do with all of this, or at the very least is a huge clue. I've tried getting on Google and looking as much as I can, but so far, no luck. All I can tell you is that he called it Han, and he said that it wasn't something he made often. The bottle he got it from, too, he told me was very special. It was mid-shelf at the bar, and it was always under the Midori. I wish I remembered everything he said, but I do know for sure he was clear that somehow it had to be under the Midori, that it couldn't be anywhere else in his bar, or any bar that served it. Please help me. Tell me what you found. I need to find a way out of this. I can't type more right now, but I will. But understand that if I don't get help on this, I'm done for. I'm begging you. I didn't get an ounce of sleep last night. And believe me, I tried. I tossed and turned, and found myself staring intently at that damn timer. I know now that it doesn't seem to count with any normal rhythm or beat. As comments were coming in from you all, I first saw it happening. It sped up. Seconds started flashing by. Sometimes 10 or 15 minutes would pass in just a moment. Then a chime. And a message. Again, only a subject line. They can't help you. I jumped up from my bed and ran into the living room. Why? I can't say. I just needed to be as far away from my laptop as possible. That's when, bleary-eyed and exhausted, I saw it. In front of my living room window. Inside my fucking house. There stood a shape that I still can't find the words to describe. It nearly reached my ceiling and was oblong and vaguely humanoid, but lacked definition in every sense of the word. I froze, and it hovered there. It hardly moved, but I felt it staring into me. And at that moment, my chest cramped up, and it felt like somebody had stuffed cotton down my throat, like some nightmarish Build-A-Bear. And I couldn't breathe. I felt my lungs expanding and contracting. But no matter how hard I tried to breathe, I didn't feel the slightest whiff of air go into my body. My sight started to blur, and the light around my periphery started to fade. I stumbled back onto the couch, never taking my eyes off the shape that hovered before me. And just as I was about to lose my sight completely, it erupted from out of itself into a giant black mass that covered the entire wall and sent a blast of air that peeled me onto my couch. And with that, a bellowing, deep, gnarled shout that sounded vaguely human came at me, reverberating the house and flexing the windows out, as if a bomb had gone off in just that instant. It screamed before it vanished. That's the last thing I remembered. I just woke up on my couch not 10 minutes ago, and the sunlight has started to come in through my window. I know it wasn't a dream, but my chest feels totally fine. The shape, I wish I could describe it better. It was almost like an anti-shape, like a mass of light sucking. It felt like a void manifested in front of me and calling for my confrontation with existence itself. And Lakota, that bar I'd gone to, I'm sure it was one and the same. I've tried to find out what it means and what it has to do with Han. And with that story the bartender tried to tell me, Han had to be below Midori. I remember how insistent he was, and I can't help but think that this must have had something to do with that damn prospecting trip I was on. I remember meeting several people there, but the mood was downright uncanny. I mean, as an environmental researcher, I was always kind of the nerdy guy in the room. My extent of dealing with the government was writing a long, horribly boring grant proposal to secure funding for this or that. Even in methane, the research I found my specialty in, the running joke was that I was the highest paid cow turd observer. And yet, when we embarked on this project, what was from my understanding to be just a routine prospecting trip There was an awful lot of government at every juncture. Before even setting up the trip, I had someone from the EPA reach out to me. And not just some bureaucrat, a real legit agent. He was very guarded about what he needed, except to tell me that the lands in question are in dispute. Funny, I thought. In dispute is usually what they say when they take land that's not theirs. I expected to show up and see protesters. Maybe some Native Americans trying to shut us down. But when we got out there, it was barren. They told me it was adjacent to a reservation, but as far as I could see was empty land. And driving out, I realized why it had been fenced off, and nobody was trying to get in either. The natives had set up some little towns on the outskirts, but they didn't look too keen on entering it either. Just imagine the picture here. Me, an EPA agent, and two interns standing in what looks to be an endless expanse of the flattest land you've ever seen. They told me the ground was in danger of liquefying. That was at least the first iteration of their story. They were concerned that, with such a liquefaction, the methane could escape and spark. In which case, the barren, dry, dead plot of land would burn like a matchbox. So they wanted controlled drilling. They said it was routine. But on this plot, they've never run into problems. Problems, I thought. Well, I've heard that before. I can't tell you how many jobs I've worked where people have gotten methane poisoning, or machines or drilling operations have failed, and people needed to be rescued. That was no big deal. Comes with the job, and I was used to it. But it wasn't until later that I found out what he meant by problems was on a different order entirely. I didn't get the full story until much later. But I know now that at least 7 government agents were burned to death before the day I ever set foot on that land. So much for routine. They never did give me details, and what I know I went through great lengths to find out. But what I first chalked up to simple methane poisoning, I now see much differently. Many had written of a black mass that precluded their vision, of a tightness in the chest that lingered even when they went back to their hotels, and of a strange hallucination, a word they couldn't recognize. 5 men and 2 women, all erupting in magnificent conflagrations, all ostensibly spontaneously. And I believe now that I know what they saw. And I heard that word for myself. Yet I'm still here. But my time is running out. When I last checked, the timer had dropped to about 30 hours and was counting down steadily again. Please, help me. Find anything you can hear about the bar. Look into the clues, the drinks, anything. I've tried, but all my efforts are useless here. I'm running out of time.